Kremlin, spelt in English Kremlin. It comes from the Russian word Kreml, which means a fortress or a fortified position of some kind. The word, we use it, refers to the Moscow Kremlin, which you would know as a set of buildings within a brick wall in the centre of Moscow, adjacent to Red Square. And it's the seat of the parliament and it's the seat of government in Russia now. So if we use the word Kremlin, I think we automatically think of the Moscow Kremlin. But the Kremlin itself or a Kreml, is something which is extremely important in Russian cultural history. As a fortified town, was a way of defending yourself against any form of attack, as it is in other societies too. But I think had particular resonances in Russia. We have to go back, really, to the foundation of Russia, and we're going really back to before the 9th century. And if you look down towards the area to the northwest of the Black Sea, around present-day Kiev, that is where the East Slavonic tribes, as they were known, a very nomadic group of tribes, were living without a great deal of settlement. But if you look at the geography of the area, you'll see it's cut through by rivers, and there's a whole river system, including the Dnieper, which takes you right up to the Baltic and towards Scandinavia. And those rivers were a means for the Vikings, bring themselves across that huge land area, to the great markets of Constantinople, Byzantium, and even further to the east. And they traded with the nomadic tribes and encouraged a great deal of settlement. 3 princes are supposed to have arrived. 2 actually were quickly disposed of, and Rurik was the survivor. And he brought with him his family, his retinue and his family. And in order to recompense and ensure that the dynasty survived, he would give members of his family towns within the area that was roughly becoming known as Kiev in Russia at that time. Now, a town was usually, or a settlement, was usually on a river for reasons of transport. And so it gradually became important, as these towns became important, to fortify the town, to build a wall round it, which enclosed the palace of the member of the princely family, probably 1 or 2 of the key churches that had been established by that time. They'd received Eastern Orthodoxy from Byzantium. And they would be enclosed within a wall to keep them safe. So the Kremlin, or the fortified centre of the town, was very characteristic of any form of settlement in the medieval period. Initially, the walls would have been built of wood, but fire is always a hazard. We know that the walls of the Moscow Kremlin, for example, burnt down, and the present ones date, I think, from the 16th century. What now built in stone. So the wood was quickly replaced by stone as the fortifying material. It's central to a Russian sense of huge distance, of being extremely vulnerable. Russia's a very flat, open country for the most part, and the main difficulty is forest, really, rather than mountain or difficulty of terrain. So it I think contributed to a need to enclose oneself, a need to feel secure with your local inhabitants against any form of attack. So now, when you look at the Moscow Kremlin, that wall, which has been obviously now preserved as an architectural monument, really gives you that sense of difference and enclosure, and it's the tourist entry to the Kremlin is very, very strictly controlled.
Have you been into the Moscow Kremlin?
Yes, I have. It's an extraordinary experience because it's such an iconic image which we see a great deal on our news television programmes. And what overwhelms you is not so much the Parliament building itself, but there are 4 major cathedrals in the Kremlin itself, ranging from the 15th to the 17th centuries. And they have been marvellously now preserved and restored.